people of Cedar Ridge called it kindness. Anna Whitmore called it exile. On a raw morning in 1873, the boarding house porch felt like a stage and Anna the unwilling lead. Neighbors peered from shop windows and behind lace curtains. The town's curiosity and judgment followed her down the street. They said she was a burden, a widow who couldn't have children, a quiet embarrassment to respectable families. All that Anna packed into one worn carpet bag, patched dresses, a dog-eared Bible, a handful of mementos that used to belong to her husband. The trunk felt heavier than it should, loaded with the weight of other people's opinions. Martha, her sister-in-law, kept saying it was for the best. Samuel, her brother, avoided meeting her eyes while explaining that Jack Monroe needed help on his ranch and that Anna needed a roof. The churchwomen had been practical, tucked two misfits away, a barren widow and a grieving hermit. And no one in Cedar Ridge would have to see them. Anna asked if the man had been told what the arrangement really meant. Samuel shrugged it off. It was simple. He needed a housekeeper. She needed a home. Old Pete Sullivan drove the wagon. He was stiffer than usual and a little kinder when they passed the last houses. He offered to take her east instead, to give her a new start away from the gossip. Anna shook her head. She had nowhere east to go, so she climbed into the wagon and let the town's whispers trail after her. Rain turned the road to mud. When the wagon stopped at a sagging gate and Pete rode off, Anna walked the remaining mile through tall wet grass to the ranch. The house rose like something half forgotten. A barn leaned askew and smoke curled thin from the chimney. She knocked and Jack Monroe answered. Broad-shouldered, with a face shaped by grief. His eyes were a cold grey. He took in her soaked dress, the small bag at her feet, and brusquely told her she was late and to come in. The house was sparse and smelled of old embers. Jack showed her to a small room that had belonged to his late wife. He was short with his words, businesslike, not unkind. Over the first few meals they made the rules clear. This was not a marriage, it was a practical arrangement. He needed someone to run the household. She needed shelter. Anna accepted and set about making the place livable. The first weeks were all work and silence. Anna rose at dawn, lit the stove, washed the long, neglected floors, and tended whatever could be coaxed from a ruined garden. Jack set the rhythms outside, the barn, the cattle, the weather, and kept his distance inside. He left most evenings on the porch as if a stranger's presence softened the edges of his grief. Slowly, small changes began to show. Anna found the mended fence one morning and sensed Jack's hand in the repair. A bundle of wild herbs appeared on the table, a quiet gift. The barn, once chaotic with tools, began to look orderly after Anna's labor. When she rode out on Buttercup to help drive the cattle south for shelter before winter, Jack watched her skill, and for the first time, allowed a hint of admiration to cross his face. A storm that winter broke something between them. With snow piling against the walls and the wind hammering the roof, they bedded down near the hearth on opposite sides. When words finally came, they were small and shrewd. Jack spoke of the wife and child he had lost to fever, of how he kept pace with memories rather than people. Anna told him about Thomas, the gentle husband whose death and their inability to have children turned her into an outcast. For the first time, someone spoke to her without pity. Their conversation did not solve everything, but in the hush around the dying fire, trust began to form. By spring, the changes were no longer only practical. Anna's presence shaped the house into a home. She laughed again, and Jack began to share stories of his life in Missouri, the plainness of his talk softening the hard lines of his face. They learned how to stand beside each other, not as employer and employee, but as partners who shared the chores and the burdens of a hard place. Then a desperate knock at the door brought everything they had built into sharper focus. A young woman named Rose Sullivan staggered onto the porch, fever hot and clutching a newborn. She begged them to take the baby. Anna took the child into her arms as the mother slipped away into sleep from which she did not wake. For days Anna tended the infant, soothing his cries and wrapping him in blankets. When Rose died at dawn, they buried her on the hill behind the house, and Anna found, to her own astonishment, her heart opening to the child. Jack was steady and practical. He called the baby William, then moved the legal machinery to make the child theirs. He stood before any town whisper with a look that shut them down. When Mrs. Henderson and the other gossips clucked at the convenience of Anna's sudden motherhood, it was Jack who told them in plain language, "This is my family." Anyone who had trouble with that could take it up with him. Trouble arrived anyway from farther afield. A polished carriage rolled up one spring, and from it stepped Charles Hartley, a man in a different world of suits and promises. He claimed the baby as his own and unfolded glowing possibilities, a proper education, wealth, and a name. He painted a life William could have under his care. But Jack and Anna believed a child was not made of claims and ledgers. He belonged to the hands that rocked him and the home that kept him safe. The fight moved to the courthouse. Hartley's lawyer spoke of opportunity and status, while Anna and Jack's witnesses spoke of sleepless nights and daily tending and love. The Reverend dug up proof of Hartley's own family elsewhere, a wife and children back east, and the judge ruled the adoption lawful. William stayed with the Monroes. Relief was like rain after drought. Jack wrapped an arm around Anna. William laughed and clapped his hands. The town that had once turned its back began to shift. Acceptance followed the truth that people saw with their own eyes: a child loved, a house kept, and two people who had learned to build a life together. That summer, Jack and Anna married in front of neighbors and a minister. Anna wore blue. Jack, who had carried his grief like armor, somehow looked younger and less weighed down. They made vows properly, and then went home with William asleep between them on the porch. In that quiet, Jack admitted what they both had felt for months. What had begun as a cruel joke from a small town's conscience had turned into something real and whole. Anna leaned into him and let the prairie wind roll across their porch. They had been two pieces, once broken and set aside by a harsh world. Now, in the wide reach of Wyoming sky, with the land that had tested them surrounding their house, they had made a family, not by convenience or pity, but by care, labor, and the patient decision to stay. The whispers of Cedar Ridge lingered only as background noise to the life they had chosen to build together.